Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's Tiffany Logan Baker here, and as I mentioned last week, I'm going to be talking about my book, Daddy's Girl. Here it is. You see it? So, really quick, this book is about the relationship between me and my dad, and each week for the next 10 weeks, I'm going to talk about each chapter. So, chapter 1 is in. Oh, look at my baby. He's getting comfortable. That's my schnauzer bear. So chapter 1 is called Daddy's Angel, and I talk about the relationship between me and my dad and my grandpa, because when I was a little girl, those were the two most, hey babe, those were the two most important men in my life. So when I was little, me and my dad were literally inseparable. I would go with him everywhere. I didn't care if he was going to the mailbox or if he was going to work on a car or band practice, whatever it was. I just wanted to be right there with my dad because my dad was everything to me. He was, in a sense, my superhero. He could do anything he put his mind to. People just loved him. He was so charismatic. He was open. He was honest. He was caring. He was loving. He was everything to me. And if I could be with my dad 24 hours a day, I would. I even slept in the bed of my parents for for a very long time, but we're not going to talk about that today. The only other time I was separated from my dad is when my parents would drop us off in Yuma, Arizona to spend time with my grandpa down on the Indian reservation. And when I was little, to me it was kind of like torture because I was on the res, just me, my grandpa, and my brother. There's literally nothing out there, just heat, dirt, snakes, lizards, lots of fishing. He would take us into town once a week to literally get whatever we wanted. And that was literally the highlight of my trip, was going into town with my grandpa and him taking us to the store and saying, hey, get whatever you want, no questions asked. He didn't care if the snacks were healthy. He didn't care how much soda or ice cream I put in the basket. He just got it for us. And one of the nicknames that my grandfather would call me was Kissy. It's like Kissy. I don't know why he called me that, but he would always say, Kissy, go get me this. Kissy, what do you want to eat? Kissy, Kissy, Kissy. And I just loved it. One of the trips down to the res, I think I was probably 6 or 7. At this time, I'm still sucking my thumb. I'm still very dependent on my blanket, which was this tattered blanket that I had literally since birth, and it was holey. It had ribs in it, but what I had left of the blanket, it had a border of like satin. And what I would do was I would suck my thumb, and then I would rub that satin piece like on my nose because it smelled like home, and that would bring me so much comfort, so much joy. And I was literally, I probably said literally like 5 times already. I need to find another word. Hello, thesaurus. I was so attached to this blanket. I couldn't sleep without it. I couldn't go anywhere without it. And if I left it, my parents would drive back to go get it, no matter where it was. One time, I left it in Yuma, which is 3 hours from my hometown, which is San Diego, and my parents drove 3 hours back to Yuma to get my blanket. Talk about spoiled, or parents who really care about their child. But little did I know, my grandfather was keeping note of how dependent I was on this blanket, how my parents would jump through flaming hoops to ensure I had this blanket. And I believe that when my parents drove back to Arizona to get me this blanket, I think he was like, you know what, I've had enough. This girl is way too dependent on this blanket. I have to do something about it. I'm battling a cold. It's not coronavirus. It is a cold because here in San Diego, one minute it's sunny, then it's raining, then it's cloudy, then it's hot, then it's raining. You know, it's a little bipolar. So my immune system is just like, ah. Anyway, so I went back to the res like normal. I was in year-round school, so whenever we had a break, we went to the res. And like I said, I thought it was punishments, but you know, as uh, as an adult, and now that I'm married and I have children, I can really understand why my parents would drop us off, because they needed a break. They needed time to reconnect. They needed time to just breathe and worry about themselves and sleep in if they wanted to, although I don't think my parents ever slept in. But if you're a mom or a dad, sometimes we just need those breaks. So back to the res I go, and what did I have? My very, very tattered blanket that did not keep me warm, by the way, but it was kind of like a clutch for me. It was my everything. It was my stability. It was my comfort. It gave me peace. And I'm sitting on the balcony with my grandpa like we always did in the afternoon, and he's just sitting there with his khaki pants and his white shirt, and he has his legs crossed, and he has a cigarette in his hand, and he's just kind of like tapping his foot, and he's looking at me and looking at the blanket, and he's like, Kissy, why do you have that blanket? And I was like, I don't know, Grandpa, I just really like it. It's just mine. I've had it for a long time. I don't know life without it. And he begins to explain to me how it doesn't keep me warm. It's dirty, which it wasn't dirty, but you know how you have things for so long and it has stains on it and you can no longer get those stains out. It had rips. It was just probably the ugliest blanket that my grandpa has ever seen. And he begins to tell me that it doesn't keep me warm and that I should probably get rid of it and that I don't need it anymore. And I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, and pop my thumb in my mouth, and I start rubbing my nose with that silk part, and he gets up, and he's like, give me that blanket. Okay, I can laugh about it now, but when I was a kid, it was so devastating. So I held tight to it, and I reluctantly gave it to him. I didn't want to, but I knew that I needed to give it to him. Plus, out of respect for my grandpa, I'm not going to sit here and try to fight him for it. I mean, I'm 6 years old, probably like 40 pounds, and my grandpa's 6'3". So I gave him my blanket. So my grandpa took the blanket, and he went outside, and he threw it in a metal trash can, and threw a match in it, and blew my blanket up in front of my face. And immediately, when he grabbed it, went outside, I ran to the window, and I'm watching, like, with my hands on the window, like, screaming, no, not my blanket! And he blows my blanket up, and I am so hysterical. I am screaming, I am crying, I'm trying to figure out, why would my grandpa do this to me? I knew that he loves me, but why would he blow up my most prized possession in front of my face? So I run inside the house, and I try to call my parents, but this is the 90s, guys, and my grandpa had I think it's called a rotary phone, where it's like a circle, and you have to like 1, 2, 3. So as I'm trying to frantically dial my parents, I couldn't remember what number I was on, and I had to start all over again. Do you know how frustrating that is? I tell my kids today, they have it so freaking easy. They don't even have to memorize numbers anymore. They just program it in their phone, and they just hit the button, and it sends. So my grandpa comes in, and I'm like crying, like sobbing, like somebody literally just died. And I remember him coming over to me, and he just grabbed my face with his big hands and wiped my tears. And I looked into his, he had the most amazing eyes. They were like bluish, greenish, brownish, and I remember they had like a blue ring around them. You know how like our eyes have like a dark brown or whatever ring on the outside. My grandfather's was blue, okay? And I just looked at him and he just wiped my tears and told me that everything was going to be okay. And I didn't think that everything was going to be okay. In my mind, I was like, how am I going to go to sleep tonight? I am 3 hours away from home. My grandpa just blew up my blanket in a trash can. My life is over. And I don't remember my brother's expression, but knowing him, he was probably smirking as he watched my blanket burn to a crisp. But I firmly believe that my grandfather saw something that I loved, but he knew that it was going to turn into a hindrance. I was so dependent on that blanket. My parents would go to the freaking moon to give me that blanket, and he probably thought if I don't step in and do something now that this is going to create a problem as I get older. I was sucking my thumb. By the end of that week when I returned home, I was no longer sucking my thumb because I didn't have my blanket. I would smell my blanket and suck my thumb. Like, that was my comfort. And by him burning my blanket, he broke a habit. And even though it hurt so bad, I knew that he loves me, and I knew that he saw something that obviously I didn't see. I mean, I was only 6, and I'm sure he saw something that my parents didn't see at the time either. I mean, my parents had us very young, so they probably didn't see it either, and it sucked. I mean, it sucked. But now it is one of my fondest memories. When I just close my eyes, sometimes I can see his eyes. Sometimes I can smell him. And it brings me back to the res, to going fishing with my grandfather. It brings me back to him making his own mosquito repellent and slathering all over me and my brother's face. That unconditional love that my grandfather had for me and my brother, and those memories that we were able to build with him. I mean, I never had a grandmother. My grandmother passed away when my mom was 18. My dad's mom passed away when he was 21, both before I was born. So all I had was my grandfather, and he taught me so much. He taught me how to be an independent woman, but to not lose my femininity. My grandfather always told me, Kissy, you learn how to drive. Kissy, you make a way for yourself so that way you're not always depending on a man or your father or anybody to take care of you or to take you places. Kissy, you could do whatever you put your mind to. Kissy, you're this, you're that. I mean, he just really built me and my brother up, especially me, to really put my stake in the ground and to be okay with who I am, even as a woman. My grandmother didn't drive, she didn't work, and she didn't have to because my grandfather took care of her. He took her wherever she wanted to go. He was just an incredible father to my mom and a just incredible husband. But I believe he wanted more for me. I believe that he wanted more for my mother. My mother is very smart, master's degree, ran an amazing business with my father. And I just think that he didn't want me to settle or to just be so dependent on one person. So he just really instilled in me to just be a go-getter and to not be afraid to be excellent, but to still be a woman at the same time. And I miss him so much. He passed away when I was 15, and he was just brilliant. I mean, when I say brilliant, he was the the smartest man probably I've ever met. He, even in his 80s, he was still very sharp, constantly doing math equations, which that must have like skipped a generation because I suck at math. Like, I'm horrible. I mean, I'm really good at percentages, but I suck. And he was an entrepreneur as well. My father's an entrepreneur, and being an entrepreneur myself, he and my father just taught me so much and has helped mold me into the woman that I am today, to just go after all that God has for me without tearing people down, finding my lane and staying in it, and not jumping because something looks better or something is kind of like the vibe at the moment. He was an amazing man, and it was such a blessing and a privilege to be his granddaughter. It's a blessing and a privilege to have a mom like I do, because he raised her along with my grandmother, and my mom is a firecracker. She is smart, she is feisty, she will put you in your place in the most polite way, might I add. And I literally couldn't ask for better parents. Even after all that I've been through, it helped shape Tiffany. I could literally go on and on about being my dad's angel, being my grandfather's angel, but I don't have time for that. And plus, this video would probably be like 16 hours. If you haven't ordered your copy yet, here it is, Daddy's Girl by Tiffany Logan Baker. It is available on Amazon, or you can go to my website, www.tiffany.com. I will list all of the links in the description box below. I love you guys. I hope you guys have an amazing week and represent Christ the best way that you know how. Until next time, I love you. God bless you.